So, Donald Trump has struck a new trade deal this week with Canada and Mexico, and it was described as the most important ever agreed by the US. And the president said the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, now known as USMCA, which replaces NAFTA, would bring thousands of jobs back to North America. And speaking at the White House this week, Mr. Trump said the new pact vindicated his threats over trade tariffs, and the new deal covered trade between the three countries worth upwards of $1.2 trillion, and was truly historic, and was also the biggest trade deal in the United States history. He said the new deal was much more reciprocal than NAFTA, which he described as perhaps the worst trade deal ever made, and the measures in the new deal, which Trump dubbed USMCA, will support many hundreds of thousands of American jobs. Hear, hear. Now, 1 week after, this has implications globally, which is why I included it. For those of you who follow the show closely, you will notice that we've mentioned about nationalising banks in certain countries, including this one. And here's what happened in India this week, after reported that India's NPL crisis finally erupted after the group IL and FS, which is a major shadow bank at the heart of India's economy, defaulted in one day on 3 debt payments. India's government announced on Monday that it would immediately seize control of the shadow lender, whose defaults have caused widespread upheaval in mutual funds, and the nationalisation is virtually unprecedented. The nation's corporate affairs ministry has sought to take control of a company on just 2 prior occasions, and only once followed through with Satyam Computer Services in 2009. Now, a bid by the government to take control of the debt-laden realty firm Unitech in late 2017 was stalled by the Indian Supreme Court after the move was challenged. Now, officials ousted Infrastructure Leasing and Financial Services Limited entire board, and its new 6-member board will meet on October the 8th. And the National Company Law Tribunal said that India's richest banker Uday Kotak and ICICI Bank chairman Mr. Chaturvedi will be part of a new proposed board, which will elect a chairperson themselves. Now, this particular group are AAA rated, or were for decades, but over the last few years IL and FS saw an increase in its debt levels, and the situation worsened in the last 2 months, with both the parent company and its subsidiaries defaulting on a number of repayment obligations, and banks and insurance companies have the largest exposure to IL and FS. So for India to resort to such a dramatic move, the panic must have been palpable. It's not the only country, trust me. And the nationalisation, which unfolded within a span of a hectic day in Mumbai, underscores the government's concerns about IL and FS's defaults spreading to other lenders in the world's fastest growing major economy. Trust me, it's not only India. It's going to circle the globe until people take actions. A classmate of the Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh has accused a judge of lying under oath about heavy alcoholic drinking. Really? Like, that's important. And Charles Ludington said he was deeply troubled by Judge Kavanaugh's blatant mischaracterization, and the judge denies drinking to a point of memory loss. I don't know why I didn't do that. I think most of us in our teenage years do that one time or another. I can't see how that's a problem. maybe when you're facing false accusations, maybe it's understandable, who knows. And the matter forms part of an FBI inquiry into the judge, as do allegations of sexual assault, which he also denies. Now, President Trump has said he has not limited the inquiry's scope, and the FBI inquiry has delayed a final vote on Judge Kavanaugh, who, if confirmed, is likely to make America's High Court more conservative. More conservative? Really? We the people are not interested in more conservative, more left, more right, more centre, or more up your jacksie. We the people want people doing the job and the right thing, bringing real justice, not just us, to the table. And if Mr. Kavanaugh is that man to do it, then I'm all for it. But Rachel Mitchell, the Arizona prosecutor hired by the Republicans to question one of the judge's accusers, Professor Christine Blasey Ford. Oh dear, that lady. I don't really think she realised what she was getting into. She's been programmed badly. Now, during hearings last week, gave her memo to senators on Sunday. In it, she questioned Professor Ford's credibility, calling her case weak, and saying she did not think that a reasonable prosecutor would bring this case based on the evidence before the committee. Hear. I'll have more on Mr. Kavanaugh in a later piece. The US Navy cruiser this week had an unsafe encounter, unsafe being the operative word, with a Chinese ship while conducting a freedom of navigation operation in the Spratly Islands on Sunday in the South China Sea. There's water over, is it 2/3 or 3/4 of the planet, and they choose to go in that region. It's complete insanity to me. And the USS Decatur passed within 12 nautical miles of two reefs in the Spratly Islands, which the Chinese consider sovereign territory. And the Chinese military routinely warns American ships and aircraft away, but in this case the Chinese ship came within 45 feet of the USS Decatur, and the incident is the latest in a series of testy exchanges between the US and the Chinese militaries. Now, last week China called for a mission by US bombers over South China Sea provocative, and said the US was solely responsible for the recent downturn in relations. I will have more on that later. This prompted US Secretary of Defense generals gathered in the Mattis has pulled out of a planned visit to Beijing this month, and US official said the latest sign of deteriorating ties between the United States and China. Mr. Mattis had originally planned to visit the Chinese capital to meet with senior Chinese officials to discuss security issues, but the last-minute cancellation has not been publicly confirmed by the Pentagon as yet. Now, the decision to pull out of the trip comes, like I said, amid growing tensions between Washington and Beijing on a public front, not a private. And this stems from the Trump administration's tariffs on Chinese goods to new sanctions announced against the Chinese military. And at a press conference on Wednesday, US President Donald Trump said it is often mentioned friendship with Chinese leader Xi Jinping may have come to an end. My own personal opinion, to make that clear, personally, I don't think that this is the case, unless Mr. Trump is being misguided or threatened by certain rogue SSP generals. Like I said, that is my opinion. Two pieces of mail delivered to the Pentagon mail facility this week have initially tested positive for ricin, and according to the US defense officials, the mail facility is in a separate building on the grounds of the Pentagon, and a piece of mail which tested positive never entered the actual Pentagon building. Now, all mail delivered to the Pentagon Monday was put into quarantine, and the FBI and Pentagon Force Protection Agency are responding, and further testing is expected to be done by the FBI. Ricin is a highly toxic compound that is extracted from a castor beans and has been used in terror plots previously. It can be used in powder, pellet, mist or acid form, and if ingested it causes nausea, vomiting and internal bleeding of the stomach and also the intestines, followed by a failure of the liver, spleen and kidneys, and death by collapse of the circulatory system. Now this all feels like 2001 again to me. It has all the echoes of the events of that time, hopefully minus the tragedy in New York. Of course, people remember anthrax being sent around the country to cause disruption and distraction, all of which came from one specific research lab within America. A new lawsuit has been filed in New York, and this is the examples of how governments now are just being blindsided, blocked, you name it. Anything they seem to do, someone registers some form of complaint to stall, delay, and cause mayhem. And the latest is the presidential alert messaging system. And you just can't get your head around this stuff. You really can't. Yeah. It boggles the mind. Anyway, the alert is used for national emergencies that can be deployed by President Trump, and plaintiffs in Manhattan are suing Mr. Trump and also FEMA Administrator Brock Long, claiming the alert system is a violation of America's First and Fourth Amendment rights to be free from government-compelled listening. Oh my God. Really? So now they're citing the Constitution when it fits. They went further, as well as warrantless, non-consensual trespass into and seizure of their cellular devices. Oh my, heavy words. I wonder why these same lawsuit people didn't do that for all the backdoors and the spying and the software into every person's cell phone. Same thing, is it not? In fact, actually it's worse, because that's hidden and people don't know. This is in your face, regardless of what it is, or whether it's good, bad or indifferent. Where were these people then? With the certificates, security certificates that we exposed last week. Now, the plaintiffs compare the alert system to hijacking private property for the purpose of planting a government-controlled loudspeaker in the home and on every person who is American. Now, according to FEMA, the alert is not a text or SMS short message service, but an audio and text warning that will display as a notification across a user's cell phone, and similar to the ones that carry and receive during the Amber Alerts and also weather emergencies. Now, this new presidential alert will be nationwide and only used for advance warning of national crises. To all who got the message, you're all okay. For those of you that never, well, you're all going to die. Only joking. I just had to say that one. I'm in one of those humour moods, and I'm going to use it. Amazon because we've criticised them heavily, and I still think that they need to be broken up. But they've done something of use this week, and it said on Tuesday that they would raise its minimum wage to $15 per hour for US employees from next month, bowing to criticism of poor pay and also poor working conditions at the world's second most valuable company. Now, the increase pushes Amazon's lowest wage above that of those at Walmart and Target, but it is still $7 shy of the average for a non-management worker in transportation and warehousing in the United States as a whole. Mr. Bezos says, "We have listened to our critics, thought hard about what we wanted to do, and decided that we wanted to lead. And the pay increase effective from next month will benefit more than 250,000 Amazon employees in the United States, as well as over 100,000 seasonal employees who will be hired at sites across the country this particular holiday season." Good start. 7 US law enforcement officers have been unfortunately shot, according to officials, and one of them fatally in an incident in Florence, South Carolina. Now, police in the city of Florence have been responding to a call for help from the sheriff's office, and a gunman had been holding children hostage and was involved in a 2-hour standoff before surrendering and being taken to hospital. He has not been identified. I can guarantee it will be a triple-barrel name, and the motive is unclear. The US President Donald Trump has tweeted about the shooting, quoting South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster. Something to ponder on with this incident. In 2012, we had the Sandy Hook shooting incident, followed by the storm known as Sandy. No, recently we have had the storm Florence, and now a shooting incident in Florence. Things that make you go, The United Nations Children's Agency, really, I wouldn't call it that, has this week suspended cash transfers to 9 million of Yemen's most impoverished citizens. UNICEF said the decision, which entered into effect as of yesterday, came after it was unable to set up a call centre to get feedback from beneficiaries. Sources say that the Houthi rebels who control northern Yemen hindered the launch of the call centre because they feared it might reveal their manipulation of cash transfers. The Houthis have been at war with the Arab coalition since March of 2015, and the rebels have repeatedly been accused of diverting aid to their supporters. The real reason is the UN are bankrupt, as we have kept telling you. Bankrupt. They need to fly straight and quickly.